Thank you very much, everybody. In the interest of time, I think we'll get started right away. So my name is Laurie Ebbison, the current National CAC Chairperson. I'm positively thrilled to welcome you to the first ever CAC Fireside Chat that we've been able to hold with the Commissioner. This is hosted by your National Executive Committee. And quite honestly, on the eve of Remembrance Day, I think it's quite fitting that we borrow a page from the playbook of President Roosevelt, who from 1933 right through 1944, so the entire World War II period, did a series of 30 radio conversations termed his Fireside Chat, and it was a way to directly speak to the public. So NEC is quite thrilled that the Commissioner has had the courage also to agree to do likewise today and share with us perhaps a few war stories, some ideas about what keeps him awake at night, and also some tips for our CAC practice. A few reminders before I turn it over to the Commissioner. *6 will mute your line to reduce any background noise. To unmute, it's also *6. This call is being offered simultaneously in both official languages. This call is also being recorded, so those CAC members not available at this particular time can still benefit and access the recording through a YouTube link. So please note, following the Commissioner's address, there will be some time for questions and conversation. And with those brief reminders, I'll gladly turn it over to Don Head, Commissioner of Correctional Service Canada since mid-2008, and a man with an illustrious career in provincial, territorial, and federal corrections. So with that brief introduction, Commissioner, over to you.
Thanks, Laurie, and good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. I have Natalie Dufresne-Meek and Amy Jarrett with me here in Ottawa. It's a cloudy, cool day. Some parts of the country. The weather is. I'm glad that we're all sitting around the fireplace here, going to have a chat. So I want to thank Laurie and others for the invitation to just have a bit of an open dialogue, open discussion with you. I could, as most of you know, I could talk for the full hour that we have, but I don't think that will be overly productive. So I'm actually going to keep my comments relatively short, so we can have more of a engagement. I guess in terms of brief opening comments, what I would say is that first off, I want to thank each and every one of you for your participation on the Citizens Advisory Committees. There is no question in my mind that both from a personal perspective and from an organizational perspective, your involvement and involvement of your colleagues on the CACs is absolutely important and critical for us to fulfill our mandate. You provide us a second set of ears, a second set of eyes, a second opportunity to think about some of the policies, practices, procedures, the way we do business. Allow us to make sure that we've taken into account everything before go down certain paths, and that continues to be important for me. It's safe to say, and I have no problem saying this quite publicly, that at times the organization can be quite insular in its thinking, and we always that we have the next best idea within the organization, and that's not always the case. And I believe the input and feedback from CSC members like yourselves help us to actually develop and formulate much better responses, better approaches, better policies, practices, and procedures to ultimately meet the needs of offenders and ensure that our communities are safe overall. In terms of just some of the key things that are top of mind for me, issues that would not be unknown to to all of you. Issues around addressing the needs of offenders with mental health continues to be both a priority and a challenge for us. We've made a lot of progress in the last 8-9 years in terms of how we assess individuals with mental health needs, how we intervene at different levels within the organization. Having said that, there's still a lot of work that we need to do, partly because the community-based resources that we would need to tap into or draw upon are not necessarily available. They're not necessarily available in some of the geographic locations that where we are located or where offenders are released to, or they're not available because they're already overtaxed by the demand in the but mental health continues to be, like I say, both a priority and a challenge for us. The issue of addressing the needs of Indigenous Aboriginal offenders is again another major priority and something that we continue to look at how we can do business better, do things differently. There'll be an Auditor General's report coming out in the near future that will talk about where there are still challenges for us in addressing the needs of Aboriginal offenders and getting them prepared for release into the community at the earliest moment within during their sentence. Again, this is an area where over the last 8, 9, 10 years we've made a lot of progress. Have a lot of engagement and with various groups and agencies and communities. We've increased our use and engagement of elders within the organization. Have adapted a number of programs to meet the specific needs of Indigenous people. Expanded the use of pathways units. We've started to see some increase in Section 80 releases. So there has been a lot of movement over the last number of years, but again, a lot of work for us. I think one of the biggest things that continually gets reported in the media as it relates to Indigenous offenders is the issue of overrepresentation, and there's no surprise there. I think the biggest issue for me is that the way things get reported in the media is that the Correctional Service can resolve the overrepresentation issue, and that is probably the furthest thing from the truth. Really need to go back and start talking about related to education, related to health, physical and mental health, about issues regarding housing. We need to talk about issues regarding employment. So there's only so much that we can do, and we're really dependent on others. But when you read the newspapers at times, it seems that critics honestly believe corrections alone can address the overrepresentation issue. Can I just ask people if they put their phones on mute, because there's a lot of background noise and it's a little distracting. Including the squeaky chairs. So the issue of Indigenous offenders is a top of mind issue for us here as well. Other areas of interest and concern are linked to some of the other activities in the organization, such as the use of segregation. This is an area that we have been putting a lot of time and effort into over the last year and a half in looking at not only who goes into segregation, but how we reintegrate offenders safely back into the general population, either So looking at the reintegration of offenders either back into their own institution or or another institution safely. So the segregation file is a significant one for us, but I think as many of you would see, it's a significant issue not only in the federal correctional system, but also in the provincial and territorial systems. And I can also share with you that it's of great interest in in other jurisdictions around the world. Having come from a national conference recently and attending a meeting. Sorry again. Could I get people to put their phones on mute? Star 6, as Laurie had indicated earlier. So having attended an international conference of my colleagues of heads of various jurisdictions, the issue of segregation is a hot topic for them as well. Just on the federal correction level, I think you probably would have seen through the newspaper, or maybe even discussions through your engagements with wardens or district directors, our numbers have come down quite significantly in the last year or so, almost a 50% drop. We watch and monitor these very, very closely. We've asked that wardens and deputy wardens play a more direct role than they have in the past in terms of visiting segregation units, monitoring the conditions of confinement, engaging the offenders down in the units. There's no question some of our managers have difficulty understanding why we do that, but once we explain to them the importance of this and the fact that the use of segregation is the most severe constraint on a person's liberty that we can exercise in our system, they begin to understand why they, as the head of their facility, need to be more actively involved and aware of what's going on. From a broader correctional continuum perspective, we are very much interested in how people move through the system and whether we're providing interventions and programs in a timely way. Put a lot of emphasis in the last little while on refining our offender intake processes, how quickly we're able to develop correctional plans, and more specifically, the offering of programs and interventions to offenders much earlier in their sentence than has been in years gone by. So the implementation of the integrated correctional program model and the Aboriginal integrated correctional program model are one of the major priorities of the organization, and all the early results show that the approach that we've implemented is very effective. It's getting individuals involved in programs and program primers literally within the first week or that they're coming into the system, which ultimately will help better prepare individuals for consideration for some form of conditional release other than statutory release during their sentence. So a lot of work continues on that front, and will continue as we go forward, making sure that we have the most refined process for assessing, planning, delivery of interventions. And what goes hand in hand with that is the transition into the community and the ultimate supervision and of interventions and programs for offenders that are released. One of the challenges that we have in the community is making sure that we have the right beds available in the community, in the right places. As some of you have heard me before, there still are some challenges in communities around halfway house beds and the location of them. In years gone by, people would have talked about NIMBY, not in my backyard. I actually coined the phrase a number of years ago. It's more like banana, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. And there still are some challenges there. But we are starting to find some groups and some organizations who are quite open to looking at either expanding some of their bed capacity in some communities or looking to take on the challenge of trying to find other locations. So we definitely, as we go forward and we enhance our overall approach around the assessment of offenders and the planning and the provision of interventions and programs, getting cases to the parole board earlier than we have in the past, there truly is the opportunity for us to see more offenders out in the community under supervision. So consequently, we need to make sure that we've got the right resource capacity, the right bed availability to support those releases. Just on the overall financial front within CSC, just a couple of comments I would make. As all of you know, when the government came to power just for a year ago, they brought a budget in not too long after, and the Correctional Service Canada did not receive anything in that budget. So we continue to operate with the budget that we've basically had for the last couple of years. There are some challenges in some areas in relation to that managing with that budget, but we can find ways ensure that we're not only doing what we need to do, but we're also trying to find opportunities to advance the agenda and to be innovative in some key areas. One of the things I will note, though, is that when we look at our population numbers overall, when you go back about a year and a half or so ago, when we were at our peak population, which was about 1,300 individuals incarcerated in the penitentiaries, and about 8,000 or so in the community, we've actually seen almost and it varies on a day-to-day, month-by-month basis, but we've seen between 800 to 1,000 less offenders in the facilities. So that means that there are less offenders incarcerated than there were a year and a half ago. We've seen a slight increase in the community, which is positive. But the increase inside the institution is worth noting, because one of the things that I've asked the organization to do is to look at, again, although our double bunking numbers have come down from the peak around 21-ish%, back down to around 8%, which is where we were, or even lower before a lot of the previous government's legislation came in. We really have right now a single cell available for every offender that we have incarcerated. Now, the reality is that there will always be some level of double bunking as a result of just the geography and some of the population dynamics. But the numbers, I have asked the organization to look at have we minimized those kind of issues that are still within our control. So there are a lot of discussions going on right now about looking at where, for example, some voluntary transfers can occur from one region that may have a little higher level of double bunking to regions that literally have no double bunking and have empty cells, to bring that number down to levels that we would not have seen for over 20 some odd years. So we're moving to continue to drive those numbers down. The other thing which I'm cognizant of is that with even though we've got the same resource base, that resource base is primarily based on the 15,000 that we had, and we've got less offenders. So we need to make sure that we are using all our available resources in the most appropriate fashion. So I'm actually stop there. I could go on any one of those items for quite a while. But I really do want to use the time that we have available for engaging with and I know there's some questions that people have that they want to pose.
Yes. So thank you, Commissioner. That gives us a nice overview of all the kinds of things that are going on. If you have a comment or question, I will ask that you will identify yourself and your region or locale, so sort of position that. And let's go east to west, shall we? Start with the Atlantic region and see if we have some questions emerging from Atlantic participants.
Lori, it's Peggy from Peggy Joyner, Atlantic Regional Chair. We are encountering some difficulties with recruitment, and it's the new screening process that's out there because of the need for fingerprints, and the assessments take 2 to 4 months to the screening assessment takes 2 to 4 months to get completed, and we've had some complaints from some people who have been applying. Does the Commissioner have any idea of some of the things we might be able to do, if there's any way around that, or some suggestions from his people about what we can do?
Oh, thanks, Peggy. Yeah, this is an issue that's it's come up several times in actually several different areas. With the new process, which we actually don't have much control over, there are some challenges, particularly as it relates to the fingerprinting piece, which I think it's most ultimately goes through the RCMP process, and so there are challenges, and there's not much that we've been told that we could do to get around that. Now, we have been looking at certain cases whether we can facilitate at least sort of the front-end gathering of the fingerprints in some areas. So, for example, one of the challenges we had in relation to some groups is there's no ready access place to go to get the fingerprints, although we can. So we continue to try to work with the different agencies about whether we can take the fingerprints and apply them and then let the process unfold. Unfortunately, we don't control. So we're quite aware of the challenges. We're trying to minimize as much as we can any of that time delay through us trying to do some of the process. Ultimately, the checks are not in our control, and we really are in a bit of a corner.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from Atlantic?
Yes, this is Donna Gardner from Newfoundland. Good afternoon, everyone. I was just wondering if you have any numbers on how many CACs there are right now across the country and the total number of members, and what we all can do from national and our local CACs to try to increase these numbers, because I know since I've been involved, it's been going down.
Yeah, so thanks, Donna. My understanding is that we're still running around 51, 52 CAC chapters, for lack of a better title, when we look at all the institutions and the parole offices across the country. We're well aware that in some cases the numbers have gone down. We've heard where a couple of places where people have been actively recruiting individuals from the community to try and come and participate. One of the things, a couple of things I would suggest that we may want to look at, and it's a bit more of an outreach kind of process. I think to a large extent that in some of the CAC members that I've talked to in terms of how they go about recruiting, it's sort of been the traditional approach of looking for people around the the general neighborhood, for lack of a better phrase, or people they run into who may express an interest corrections, or who even have questions about corrections, and they said, well, people say, well, come be part of the CAC. We may want to actually think about how we outreach to some groups, some agencies, some organizations to be members of the CAC who will actually help us in terms of our just our overall agenda. So, for example, what do I mean? Reaching out to where they exist, reaching out to schools of nursing, and seeing if there's anybody from local schools of nursing that want to be part of a CAC. Yesterday I was in Calgary and I was at Bow Valley College. We actually have 3 CSC members who sit on there for their criminal justice studies. Three members that sit on their directors, for lack of a better phrase. So reaching out to the community colleges and sort of do the reverse, see if somebody from the community college wants to be part of the CAC. Reaching out to even some of the, and we have to be careful there in terms of conflicts, but reaching out to some of the municipal councils, some of the local Aboriginal communities where they exist. Reaching out to trade unions, people who could potentially help us get into discussions about finding employment opportunities for offenders, local businesses. So I think we need to really think about reaching out to some of those targeted groups and agencies and organizations that can help us in terms of our overall agenda, some of the challenges that we have. So, those are just a few off the top of my head, and I think the list is endless when you think about some of the activities and some of the things that we're involved in, whether it's health issues, whether they be employment issues, whether they be support services issues, and of course then local neighborhood people as well.
Commissioner Head, this is Marty Schlosser from Ontario. I know it's not our turn yet, but I feel like I need to jump in here and just comment on one thing that would help us tremendously in this area when we reach out to the community and speak to various groups, and that is there used to be a document, a binder called the Speaker's Binder, and it contained a number of excellent resource data sets in there. It had some videos and such that we could have access to, but those are no longer available online. Is there any way those could perhaps be reinstated, sir?
Yeah, you're talking about the old Speaker Bureaus kit, Marty?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah, yes. I think all those materials still exist, and we can look at refreshing them, evergreening them, updating them, and definitely making them available. And I think it's even easier now that we're in a more electronic world than we were previously. So, no, I think that's a great idea. I mean, one of the other things we may want to out to potential CAC members is using social media. How can we use Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Flickr, Vimeo, I don't know, Pinterest, I don't even know how you do that, but anyways, using social media to reach out. There is no question there's obviously a much younger audience that uses a lot of those social media opportunities. Just an aside, I keep talking about Facebook, but I was at a meeting where there was quite a youthful group, and they told me, Mr. Head, that Facebook is the seniors channel. So it made me feel really old.
Must have been my son.
But there are all kinds of social media opportunities, and we may want to look at how we use that, how we integrate, just picking up on your point, Marty, how we integrate some of that Speakers Bureau stuff in those social media avenues.
Great. Thanks. I'm aware of our time, so I'd like us to move to Quebec region if we could. Commissioner, do you have the capacity to tap into the simultaneous interpretation and garner questions from Quebec?
We'll be able to work it out here.
Maybe while we're working on that, Marty, you prompted Ontario. Maybe we'll take one more question from Ontario.
Anybody?
Apparently not.
Okay, well, I've got it's Mark Jowett at Ottawa Parole,
Right.
and it goes back to the fingerprinting. The charging the people $50 for, in effect, volunteering to help the government that they pay to support through their taxes. I'm having a hard time making the argument. I know when they're young, you can say, well, this will lead, could lead to your career and et cetera, But when people are older, they really balk at that $50 charge. And like I said, they're already paying taxes. And is there anything we can do about that fee?
No, I mean, we have no control over that. I mean, one of the things that we, like I say, that we're looking at, and this has come up with a few other groups. So, for example, when this came up as an issue with some elders, with even the people we're hiring for nursing positions, and so we're trying to push the envelope a bit in relation to people are able to come where we have the ability to do the fingerprinting. We wouldn't charge. But when they go to those other groups, agencies, we have no control over that at all. So we're looking at how much of that that kind of service we could offer, knowing again, like, we're not resourced to do it, but if we did do it, we wouldn't look to charge people. But we also need to make sure that that when we do it, we're doing it in a way that's going to be accepted by those that are doing the screening, because if it's not done properly, it'll have to be done again, and they'll have to pay $50 anyway.
Thank you, Mark.
This is.
Can we access?
Am I unmuted yet?
Go ahead, Sharon.
I wanted to ask Dawn. Well, I have two questions. One is funding. I'm looking at NEAC, REAC, CAC. The funds are different going to each division. I think because we're all volunteers, they should be equalized, because with travel caps, and it's great with some of the things you've said about recruitment, how we go, but if you don't have the funds to proceed, that makes a problem. We just had a past national chair resign. They haven't been reimbursed from their site since April. That's a staff issue, but they've been tipped off to do it, and it didn't work. The second one is employment and employability. We're there to help these people go through reintegration, go to the community. However, a big problem is with their ID still. My counterpart at Kiel has said, if you haven't got your citizenship papers, gosh knows where they went, it's $200. We're still not. We started this back in 2000 to make sure people had IDs. That hasn't come to fruition. So in Toronto, they have a group that are loaning offenders money that they pay back in small amounts monthly. We should maybe look at raising the $80 to cover the expense of getting some of that paperwork, or could corrections do small loans while they're there to collect the money monthly?
Thanks, Sharon. So a couple of comments on the first around the money piece in relation to other committees. This is a good opportunity. God bless you. An opportunity for us to have that discussion. Like I indicated, our resources are finite. There are some challenges, but what we've done, just as an example, with NEACs, REACs, and a few other committees like that, is we made it clear that
whoever's coughing, put your mute button on.
what we've said is that if we're going to make any investment, clearly there needs to be some goals and objectives and some measurable, tangible results produced. So where we've gone, for example, with the NEAC, there's been some very specific plans developed, some very specific deliverables, and those are closely monitored throughout the year, and they have been tied to our overall agenda and objectives. So I'm aware that there's a submission put forward in relation to the CACs. And we can talk a bit about that on this call. But any investment like that really needs to be linked well to getting some results out of that. Like with the NEAC and others, it made it clear that just giving money for the sake of having a meeting isn't a result. What is going to be the benefit that I could report back to the organization, to the minister, or to a parliamentary Senate committee? What's the advantage out of that kind of investment, and how does it help our goals, us achieve our goals and objectives?
Are you saying that the CAC input and what we're doing is doesn't meet up to NEAC or REAC?
No, what I'm saying, Sharon, is the same thing I said to the NEAC. We need to again make sure that whatever's coming out of there we can report on and from a results perspective. And I'll be honest, in terms of some of the investments from years gone by, in terms of meetings that were occurring with CACs, the only thing that could be reported was that there was a CAC meeting. So it's not to say that it's less valuable or more valuable. It's to say that we need to make sure that it's clear as to what the tangible results are that we're looking to come out of that. And I think it's relatively easy to do.
How do we do that?
Well, that would take up a lot more time than we've got at this Fireside Chat.
Would you let Laurie know how we can do that?
Oh, quite easily.
I'd appreciate
now
that.
It's time to definitely move on to another question. But
yeah,
I think that's
no
a
problem.
very worthwhile discussion, and NEC is certainly looking for direction in how we do address the corporate priorities and contribute to the deliverables. So I think that is a paramount conversation for us to have, and I appreciate that. In the interest of time, if it's okay, I think we've identified the ongoing issue of IDs. It is earmarked in our employment and employability strategic priority for CAC. So I think maybe we'll have to come back to that and maybe move on to the next question. But thank you for raising those points, Sharon. Let's go to the Prairie region. Do we have questions coming out of Prairies?
Hi, Laurie. This is Deirdre. This
is
Deirdre from
EISW.
Yes, and I don't have a question. I just want to say this is a very interesting discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deirdre. Anyone else from Prairies? I think someone
was
trying to
this is Howard.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's Howard from Edmonton Institution. Mr. Head, I want to thank you for coming out to our site in October and the work that you've done there. I would like to give you a couple of updates, and that there's 2 cleaning crews presently working to clean the institution, outside cleaning crews. There's new sidewalks poured. There's a second sacred ground in progress, and the library location is being negotiated with our union partners. So Howard, progress is happening.
Thanks for that, Howard. And I want to personally thank you for your engagement for when Fraser McCauley, myself, Denny Bombardier were out there dealing with some very significant issues. For those that don't know, without going into too much detail, we were involved in dealing with some ongoing problems at Edmonton Institution. Howard made himself, as he does all the time, made himself available to the institution. He made himself available to us. He shared in a very frank, candor, and respectful way what were some of the challenges and issues going on there, what were some of the the areas of strength and areas for improvement. As a result of his input and input from all the staff and the offenders and managers that we talk to, we've developed a very significant plan for Edmonton to get them back on track and do what they need to do. So again, Howard, I want to publicly thank you for your input and your support, and I really appreciate the update. It's still early days. I think we're moving in the right direction, and as we go forward with some of the bigger pieces, I think we'll be able to put in place the long-lasting agenda framework that we need for that institution.
Well, there's certainly hope. One of the aha moments that I had, which would be applicable to other CACs, I'm sure, is that in our planning meetings that you had had us put together our population management planning meetings, one of the big aha moments was that the different sides of the house, the different players in the institution, so the CX side doesn't understand the roles of the intervention and program side. They don't understand the roles and the goals of each of their different sides of the house. And to the point that a very prominent CX did not know what a pre-pathways program was. And I was appalled. And a member of the institution that has been there for over 20 years didn't know what pre-pathways was and had to have it explained to her. And so I think we have such a role with CAC to make that happen, to bring the sides of the house together and have either information centers, sessions, or make recommendations to the wardens and the assistant wardens to have those type of information sessions available to their staff, to educate our staff on the different roles that everybody has, because it's a very complicated system with many fingers. And it was a real aha moment.
I really appreciate that feedback, Howard, and I think it's bang on. What Howard is commenting on is one of the things that literally I pushed the institution to do was to form a committee, not made up of just the managers there, but from representatives from the different areas in the institution, from different levels in the institution, to develop 3 or 4 proposed population management strategies for that institution, and with the sole purpose of getting a routine in place that was standard, maximizing opportunities for offenders to be involved in interventions, in programs, in recreation, and get away from the lockdown culture mentality that had been developing over there for a period of time for all kinds of reasons, good, bad, or indifferent. And as Howard pointed out, truly on that first day that group met, I thought this experiment was going to actually fail. But as they worked through it, and the individual that I asked to facilitate it, who's there currently acting as the deputy warden, Albert Boucher, was able to get people just to do exactly what Howard said. First off, to understand exactly the role that every other division or area of responsibility plays in the institution. And once they got to that point, they were able to develop some proposals that are actually very well thought out and will actually move the institution in a direction. In terms of the larger point, I agree, Howard. We're going to continue to not only in Edmonton but in other places to push that broader communications engagement. We've also invited Edmonton. They're on a quarterly basis. They will have staff assemblies. They will have more briefings. They will open up their briefings to more staff members than just supervisors or managers, so that at the end of the day, that everybody knows everything about everything that they should know about, and that there should only be very few things where people there's just the need to know piece. So that aha moment, I think, was one that was really needed at that institution. I think will serve them well in the long run. It won't. It necessarily won't change everything overnight. But all of a sudden, people are now starting to look at each other differently, starting to respond differently. And as we've heard through a couple of briefings over the last couple of weeks, there's actually a level of joviality and laughter and collegiality at the institution that hadn't been there for quite a while. Is that fair to say, Howard?
It certainly is. We've got a long, hard road ahead of us, but we have hope, as I said, and there is certainly signs of improvement. And with the DWs in place and with the assistant warden in place and some of the slots filled, I think we can move forward positively.
Oh, and thanks for that, Howard. And there is no question in my mind, and I say this to all CAC members, that if it wasn't for Howard and the CAC there helping to, again, bring forward the issues, to share them with senior management, we wouldn't have been able to zero in on some of the more significant issues or problems there. So, again, Howard, on a personal level, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and it's the same to all CAC members. I believe that's the kind of dialogues you have with your wardens and deputy wardens and district directors. That truly is valued and cherished.
Thank you.
I'm aware of our times. Can we just move to Pacific and see if there's a couple of questions that we can take from Pacific region, please?
It's Bob Marshall from Pacific region.
Go ahead.
Hello, Don.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Listen,
good. I'm going to be on your region in a couple of weeks.
Okay, we look forward to seeing you. I've got a couple of points I just want to make, but I'm going to deliver them in my famous Dale Carnegie 2-minute drill. So the first point is the program that's been running for a couple of years out here called Employment to Empowerment, which you've greatly, advanced the funds for the last 2 years. And under the direction of Lisa Bain and Bobby Sandu, we've had tremendous success in getting offenders who are being released out to the community, getting meaningful employment. Now, I understand the program out here may be ending next March, but if you can find a way to extend it out here, we'd appreciate it. Plus, let's get it going in other regions. Secondly, point I want to make, about 3 or 4 years ago, you were out to a REACT forum, which was held in Burnaby. You had Ann Kelly with you and a couple of other people. But during your remarks on at the end of the conference, and you decided to talk about the forum and so forth, you also delivered a very strong message that if we're going to have these forums, if we're going to spend the money, if we're going to get people out to them and take them away from their work, then we better have some meaningful results down the road from having the forum. That was a very strong message, and I personally have delivered that message to various CSC or CAC groups over the last 3 or 4 years. So I think my 2 minutes are up, and thanks again for all your work, Don.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. And just a quick response. In terms of the employment piece, this is truly one that I think is successful and is moving in the right direction. Our plan at this point in time is to look at extending it beyond this fiscal year, because the results that we were looking at are being delivered, and so it is quite positive. We're seeing offenders getting jobs out in the community. It truly is. It truly did come together the way that people had suggested it would. So this is fantastic, and thanks for your support in that as well. And on your second point, again, thanks. Again, we really the more that we can talk about the results, and it ties in with where this government sits on investment, the concept of deliverology, and being able to talk about results is the mode that we're in. So again, going back to Sharon's point, definitely I'll talk to Laurie about how things can be shaped and how we can define define deliverables, define results, and which will allow for some not huge, but some modest investment in some key areas linked to the CAC. So there is no question, there's going to be some investment. How much, again, will depend on how we define those results.
Right. Thank you.
Fabulous. Well, I think on that note, we know that we have CAC Awareness coming up, CAC Awareness Week coming up in January, where our theme is about CAC making an impact. So there's our challenge, I think, to really start to articulate some of the results and the deliverables and how CAC is having an impact and having an influence. So there's your challenge. And then I'll put a challenge forward to the Commissioner to see if we can't convince him to do this on an annual occasion, to come back and revisit with us and have these fireside chats and have this engagement opportunity, because I personally have found it very rewarding. Thank you very much for your time today.
Laurie, just have a sec. We didn't check back in with Quebec. I wonder if we need to do that.
I don't know how we do that. Have you got can you do that through the interpretation, or do we need to extend it or divert the Commissioner to the French version?
My understanding was that they could just join the call through their moderator.
While we're looking at that, I'd like to ask Don, is Howard Staper still our CI?
No, as of January 1st, Howard is he's taken a job with the province of Ontario.
So he's leaving us.
Yes, his term was coming up early in the new calendar year anyway, and the Ontario province has offered him a position. I think it's for a 3-year term, as I think they're calling it independent advisor on corrections.
Thank you for that, because it didn't make it clear. It sounded like he was just taking on another role.
Yeah, no, I when I first read you're absolutely right, Sharon. When I first read the newspaper articles as well, I thought, okay, well, he's doing this off the side of his desk or whatever the case may be. But that got clarified yesterday in actually the way the announcement that came out from the minister's office. I think it's on his website. So.
Thank you.
Are we able to go to our Quebec region? Are we able to go to Quebec region for questions?
Sebastian, are you there? Are you able to do that?
Yes, we are with Quebec. I'm translating.
Are there any questions coming forward from our Quebec CAC members?
There are. There is one.
Go ahead.
Gilbert Guéret from Quebec region. It's a comment. We had some problems with recruitment, especially in parole, and so we put 6 of the parole officers under the same roof. It's been 8 months now that we're regrouping them, and it works quite well. What I want to raise is perhaps we should review the Commissioner's report. It's interesting. It's really interesting for other regions of Canada to implement this type of process.
So, sorry, I'm not clear what process you're talking about.
Well, we have 6 parole officers which all had their CACs. Since we have a recruitment problem, we regroup all these 6 offices under the same CAC.
Oh, the regroupement des personnel for the CAC.
So they are volunteers of their own autonomy in their own sector, but...
Oh, oui. Okay, d'accord. Okay, yeah, again, I think this is... I've actually had a discussion briefly with Monsieur Tousignot about this. And we're going to... one of the things that we're going to do is similar to what I talked about before, is looking at how we can use some different avenues to advertise, to bring people in. So we're going to look at how we can possibly use social media and as well out to some of those more special interest groups or organizations that I talked about. So we had a brief discussion about this a couple of weeks ago. So this is something that we're looking at specifically for la collectivité dans la région de Québec.
Merci, Quebec. Well, with that, I think we are coming to the end of our time. So again, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to our NHQ colleagues for organizing this call and the simultaneous interpretation. We're appreciative of that. And thanks to all our CAC members for taking the time out of your day to participate in this call, and continued great work at your sites. Bye for now, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.
Lori.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.